Yes, I also saw.
Um,
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, okay.
can you
Okay.
see it?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Actually,
Let me go
actually,
to the
I should ask Professor Enrica to share her slides with me so that I can.
send it.
Right,
I
right,
already done it. Send it.
right. Mm, right.
Okay. Is it
Okay.
okay
So,
now?
okay.
Le
Perfect.
let me you Professor Prashant Patnaik, sir,
Yes.
at Bradford, HDCA has organized a excellent conference and workshop. As you know, the Professor Enrica is currently the president of HDCA.
Yes, of course. I do
Yes,
know.
yes, yes. So
Uh,
she has wonderfully organized a successful Bradford conference. So how
Right?
was uh, many friends of mine has joined there. Right.
Rani Bhai, we are
Yes.
at 9:01 p.m. So I'm gonna
Okay.
admit the participant who has been there in the waiting room. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Sure. Huh? Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have no merit for the Bradford conference. PB Anand was the conference organizer and he did
Okay.
an excellent job. So yeah, it was very nice. It was really, really well organized with a lot of nice keynote speeches and a lot of interesting presentations. So it was really nice.
Yes. Yes. Yes, my friends, Dr. Lucy, Indrani, Vinathe, all of them were talking about that, about the conference, how the sessions went and everything. So I missed it really.
Yeah.
If I were there, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, next time.
Yes, yes. Yes. Actually, currently I am doing my PhD work, so so I cannot, I don't have that flexibility to move.
Okay, Rani Bhai. So
Mhm.
we have some 17 participants already joined.
Okay, so
Okay.
let me begin with the permission of Professor Prashant Patnaik and Professor Enrica. May I begin now? Professor Patnaik, sir, you are muted. Please unmute. Yes. Professor Patnaik, can you hear
Yeah,
us? Okay.
yes, I can hear now.
Okay. So may I begin, sir?
But yeah, please do. Please do.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Um, what I will do today, since for some unavoidable reasons we could not arrange the fifth session, but this is the sixth session. So I'll present some of the words on these CDs, and I'll then introduce a very short introduction on today's speaker, and then we will go for the microphone will be handed over to Professor Enrica. And then after that, after finishing her speech, there will be a Q&A session, a question answer session. Is that fine, sir?
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So, dear distinguished scholars, represented, respected participants, the colleagues, and my friends from around the world, a very warm good evening to you all. It is a privilege and a profound joy to welcome you to session 6 of Individual Wellbeing and Social Welfare Study Circle. In short, we used to call IWSW, an ongoing intellectual journey that has already carried us through remarkable explorations in philosophy, economics, ethics, and evaluative foundations of human development. Over the past months, through sessions 1 to 4, we have traveled together across some of the most powerful trajectories of contemporary thought, from the roots of social choice to the tensions between individual rights and collective outcomes, from the intricacies of well-being measurement to the conceptual richness of functionings and capabilities, from the challenges of interpersonal comparison to the broader normative questions that shape societies and institutions, and from the epistemic foundations of justice to the moral demands of public reasoning in a world increasingly marked by inequality, exclusion, and fragile democracies. In each of these sessions, our distinguished speakers, leaders in their respective fields, have enriched our understanding in ways that deepen both our scholarship and our civic responsibility. And all of these has been possible because of the generosity, intellectual openness, and curiosity that this community embodies. Today, in this session 6, we will continue this collective quest with renewed energy. It is my great honor to welcome Professor Enrica Chiappero-Martinetti, whose contributions to multidimensional poverty analysis, capability theory, and evaluation methodology have shaped the field in enduring ways. Her work stands at the intersection of philosophical clarity and empirical depth, exactly the combination that the capability approach invites us to cultivate. This evening, Professor Chiappero-Martinetti will guide us through the theme of evaluating development projects and policies from a broader multidimensional and multi-layer perspective. At a time when development interventions are often assessed through narrow indicators, when human lives risk being reduced to numbers, and when policies sometimes forget the very people they intend to serve, her perspectives offer both a corrective and an inspiration. The IWSW Study Circle was founded precisely to create such spaces. Spaces where we think together, question together, and imagine together, where scholarship becomes a form of solidarity, and where global dialogues help local struggles find new voice. Let me give you a brief introduction or brief present about our speaker, because many of us know about her works and contributions, but some of them may not be aware of her range of contributions she had contributed. So Professor Enrica Chiappero-Martinetti is a professor of economic policy at the Department of Political and Social Science, University of Pavia, Italy. She is one of the founding members and a fellow of Human Development and Capability Association, HDCA, serving since its inception in 2004. Throughout her long-standing involvement with the association, she has held key roles including vice president from 2004 to 2008 and 2010 to 2011, and editor of the Journal of Human Development and Capabilities from 2017 to 2022. Currently, she is the president of HDCA. Her research focuses on the operationalization of the capability approach, as well as poverty and inequality analysis, social justice, social innovation, women's empowerment, economic democracy, social entrepreneurship. She co-edited the Cambridge Handbook of the Capability Approach along with Professor Muzaffar Kizilbash and Professor Siddiqur Osmani. And as we proceed, let us carry forward the spirit with which we begin this journey, a spirit of openness, mutual respect, and deep engagement. The same spirit that Professor Amartya Sen has taught the world through decades of scholarship and moral courage. Thank you all, and once again for being here, for your commitment to learning, and for making this study circle a truly global intellectual community. With these words, let us begin today's session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ronnie, for your kind words and also for your kindness and your invitation to be part of this cycle of lectures. I have to express my deep sense of appreciation for this excellent initiative. I was so happy to see a lot of old friends and distinguished scholars in the list of the speakers of this session. I think that is really a great initiative, and I'm extremely grateful to all the organizers and particularly to Professor Prasanta Pattanaik for inviting me in this prestigious a group of people that are animated this initiative. So thank you sincerely. I'm really much happy to be with you tonight and to share with you my research interest. So the topic I'm going to talk with you tonight is a topic relatively new, even for me. Is something I'm working in the recent months. And it is one of the field of investigation that I think that the capability approach can really give an important contribution. So as you know, as you are aware, in the last, let's say, 20, 25 years, the literature on the capability approach grew up in an amazing way, touching different research fields, different disciplines, investigating a new, opening new avenue of investigation. And it is extremely great. It's a big pleasure to see how the capability approach is spreading out and is able to contribute and to provide new insights and new perspectives in different subjects and in different fields. Among this variety of fields, and there is one that I think that, as I said, now it can indeed be quite relevant from a capability perspective. And it is the topic related to the way in which we can evaluate development projects and policies from the perspective of the capability approach. So let me just raise some questions that in a way inspired this work that I'm trying to doing. So the question is, what is the impact of development projects and policies on individuals and communities? To what extent we are aware about the efficacy of these projects and policies? How do they work? How do they really work? Which which way are able to improve the living condition of people and especially the poorest or the most marginalized groups that in a way should be the major aim, the major scope of any development project or development policy. The second point is that to what extent there is a coherence, even a partial coherence between intended targets and results and the effective impact produced. So again, I think that there is a deficit here in the research, because sometimes the way which the policies are conceived and the way in which the policies are able to produce their own results is something that is not always coherent or consistent. What donors and policymakers can learn from this exercise, from this project evaluation? So the idea is that they should be able to provide information helpful in order to allocate resources, or they should support the design of future intervention. So to what extent this information provided by projects evaluation is able to inspire or to support the decision-making process. So the aims of this discussion today is to reflect about the fact that if the capability approach can contribute to the literature on impact evaluation, from what are the main features of the capability approach, so from a more human-centered, multidimensional, and multi-layer perspective. More specifically, what we'll do is to discuss the limitation of experimental methods. I don't know if you are aware with this literature, but experimental methods, and especially randomized controlled trials, are dominating essentially the evaluation of development projects. We will see it is indeed a quite powerful tool, but with some limitations in a way. And this is the scope is exactly to discuss to what extent these RCTs are able to provide all needed information that can be coherent from the point of view of the policymakers or of the development practitioner. What we'll do, so we'll be starting with discussing the limitation of the experimental method, which really represent the gold standard today. Then we'll try to suggest how the capability approach can offer a broader perspective that can be helpful in guiding the evaluation exercise coherently with the ethical values assumed. And then we'll also show how the capability approach can be used for evaluation purposes, because we try to test the methodology that we want to suggest in order to see if it works or not. So this is essentially the scope of my talk today. So just bringing you in the reflection of this impact evaluation analysis. So as I said, this is something that is a topic I'm working on together with another colleagues in my department, Pietro Ghirlanda, and the work that the research project we are working on is on assessing development projects through the lens of the capability approach, how a more comprehensive methodology can help to reshape evaluation. The work is in progress. As soon as we'll be in a drafted way, I will be happy to share with you all, and so to receive your feedbacks and your comments and critiques. So there are these three major parts in the paper. First, we want to clarify the difference between methodology and methods in the field of development project evaluation. We will discuss in a critical way the several limitations of the RCT's methodology, and we will compare with the method of the methodology of the capability approach. And then finally, we show you an empirical exercise where we try to apply the capability approach for development purposes to a health project in Kenya. So let us start. Well, let us just briefly clarify what is our starting point. we think that it was important for our purposes to mark a clear distinction between methodology and methods. So what do we mean by methodology? Essentially, a broader and preliminary theoretical framework that can help us in a way to guide all subsequent phases that characterize an evaluation exercise. While for method, we mean essentially a specific technique that can be used. So methodology, in a way, we see is a broader preliminary framework, while a method is one possible tool that can be used in order to implement, to operationalize a specific methodology. So, in a nutshell, there is a preliminary part of this work is aimed to identify an analytical scheme for evaluation purposes. So, essentially, the idea here is that sometimes there is a sort of overlapping and some confusion among the different layers, the different steps that characterize, according to us, an evaluation exercise. So, values are often mixed up with measurement tools. The effectiveness of a policy is not maybe fully coherent with the ethical value that inspire a policy. So, in a way, it seems to us that there are some, in a way, neglected steps that should be taken into consideration when we want to implement an evaluation exercise. So the scheme that we suggest is essentially organized in 4 different levels. And for each of them, we try to identify what is the type of problem, the type of statement, and the standard question that should be addressed for each of these level of analysis. Well, the first one that we think that is important to take into consideration is the ethical level, the ethical dimension, which essentially is aimed to identify the evaluation or the prescription of the problem. The type of statement that typically refer to this ethical level is the axiological or the prescriptive statement. For instance, what are the values underpinning the evaluation? What are the ethical values that in a way are embedded in a specific policy or in specific projects, and therefore these values should be taken into account in order to see if indeed the project or the policy is able to, in a way, to respect and to sustain this ethical value. The second level is the what we call the explicative level, which essentially is focused on the causation aspects, and the type of statement is more epistemic. And the question that can be related to this level is which factors can be explained or should be explained in the exercise, in the evaluation exercise. The third level is the metric one. So while the ethical and the explicative layers are related to what we call the methodology, the other 2 layers, so the metric and the anancastic, are more related to the methods. So what is the metric level? Essentially is related to the problem of accuracy in the measurement exercise. So the statement is typically more technical, and the question is which techniques we can use in order to evaluate a given policy or project coherently with the explicative and the ethical level. Finally, the anancastic level is related to the action effectiveness. Ananke is a Greek word which means essentially, in a way, can be translated as a necessity. So we want to implement the policies. We want to see what is the effectiveness of this action. This is essentially related to empirical evidence. And the standard question is to what extent the intervention works. So did the intervention work? To what extent it is able to reach the target and reach the goals and achieve the results, the expected results. So these are four layers of analysis. As I say, the first two, the ethical and the explicative, is what we can identify as the methodological framework, while the metric and the anancastic is more related to the methods. You can use a plurality of methods, you can have a plurality of methods that can be used, but still for us, it's important to try to not just to identify the methods, apply the methods, try to make an accurate measurement, to try to, in a way, to use the best technique for measuring something, but also to try to make these choices related to the tools, as well as the method used for measuring or for evaluating the efficacy of a policy in a way which is coherent with the first two layers of analysis, so the ethical values and the explicative or the epistemic level. So this is our starting point. So we want to put order, if you want, in what is an evaluative exercise in order to avoid that, to consider this evaluation simply as a technical issue, as something that you have to do in the best way possible, in the most accurate way, but it should be something that should, in a way, should be able to capture the ethical value and the epistemic aspects that are implicitly included in the policy or in the project that we want to evaluate. So hope I have been able to give you the sense of this goal that we would like to achieve. So instead of imagining that there is a policy makers or a donors or a practitioners that has their own view regarding the scope of the development project or the development policy, and then there is a technician or an expert that is able to measure the effectiveness of these policies in a certain way, but in a detached way. We would like just to try to make these two aspects coherent each other. So the aspect related to the project assessment is usually related to how and to what extent conventional or recurrent evaluation methods address these questions. So in our mind, the idea is that they are mostly focused on the third and fourth level and not sufficiently on the first and the second. Typically, this project assessment exercise is usually a short-term, focus on short-term, so on the results produced in the short term. They usually take a case-by-case approach, and they are usually focusing on observable or measurable quantitative results. So how many beneficiaries, what is the impact in terms of poverty reduction. So it is, in a way, are just focusing on important aspects clearly, but according to us, are not sufficiently explicative of the scope of the policies. So the focus is mostly on impact evaluation. So for instance, then on the number of beneficiaries, so on outcomes in a way of the policy or the project, rather than on what we call the operational evaluation aspects. So the operational evaluation aspects are not focused on the results, the outcomes, but rather on the way in which a development project or a development policies is able to be implemented. So what is for instance, the ownership of the project? What is the capacity building that the project is able to activate? What is the stakeholders engagement? So all these aspects are important from the policymakers or the practitioners or the donors, but usually are in a way quite neglected in the evaluation exercise, where mostly of the attention is on the impact evaluation, so on the outcome, on the final outcomes, rather than on these operational aspects. So as I said before, this field of investigation is dominated by what is usually called the experimental revolution. And one of the most well-known tool are the RCTs, so the randomized control trials, which in a way represent today the gold standard. It is hard to see development project evaluated with other techniques. And as a development economist, I also have to say that it's quite hard to publish a paper on project assessment or development evaluation, which is if you are not using RCTs. So in a way, it's really dominating both the field of the policy evaluation as well as the academic literature on in development studies, okay, in development economics. So in a nutshell, because I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with this method, what happened is that the impact of a treatment is evaluated on a randomly selected sample of people, villages or people, versus a control group. So there is a group, which is the treatment group, which receive the policy or which benefit from the development project, while another control group is not receiving the same benefit, and then you can just see what has been the efficacy of a project, just simply comparing your results. So up to date, more than 1,200 RCTs have been developed in a very large number of countries. And as you may know, as you remember, a few years ago, a Nobel Prize was awarded to Esther Duflo and Banerjee, who are the most well-known scholars in this field of research. So here is they also contributed to implement this JPAL with a poverty lab, where they developed this methodology and they apply this methodology worldwide. So this is very popular. If you have a look to the website, you can find a lot of work that is being done by using RCTs and a lot of empirical evidence related to it. So what are the strengths points of this methodology? Well, it is at this point a consolidated methodology, is rigorous, is a quite conventional methodology used in the past decades in medicine for the trial of medicines or drugs, for instance. So it is rigorous because it's an experimental method. It is relatively simple to use and to replicate. So in a way, this can contribute to force the popularity of this tool. Is oriented to identify the causal inference, and it is supposed to be value-free. So in a way, being a scientific method, a rigorous method, is not influenced by the opinion of the subjective view or vision of the evaluator. So in this way, this is the assumption that these are the several reasons for which the RCTs are considered as a reliable and robust method. There are, however, also several limitations that outstanding scholars pointed out, including Martin Ravillon, Angus Deaton, Cartwright, and Prichet. So they, in a way, they raised the different doubts regarding these methods. The first one is that, in a way, RCTs can suffer from what is called a technocratic illusion. So technical rather than moral or political responsibility can solve development problems. So it really is a matter of experts that in a way, in a value-free zone, are able to measure scientifically what is the impact, what is the effect produced by a development project. So in a way, this is a quite I would say not coherent in a way, what should be the reason, the motivations that can guide our development projects or development policies, where indeed some aspects related to the moral responsibility and the political responsibility should be acknowledged, should be recognized. a second limitation is that there might be some confounding factors that may affect the external validity. So here there is a distinction between internal validity. So the capacity of the sample to control the experiment in a way without being affected by other factors that in a way may affect the results. And then there is this external validity that refer to the possibility to scale up, to extend the results of the evaluation to a larger population. So the idea is, again, the experiment is able to control any factors that may affect in both the internal and the external validity. But as you can imagine, it's not, we are not in a lab. We are referring to human beings, to specific context. So there might intervene some confounding factors that can affect, indeed, both the internal and the external validity. So it is hard not to control everything when we are referring to people, context, communities where many other factors may intervene. A third critique is what is called as defined as the Hawthorne effect. So here the question is that it might be the case that the participants that know that are observed may in a way change their behavior. So again, it is hard to imagine that people are not adapting in a way to the circumstances or changing their behaviors when they are observed. So it is something that is not always easy to control, exactly because the element of the experiments are human beings, so they can clearly adapt themselves and their own behavior to the circumstances. Further, there is this idea that the RCTs are not indeed a value-free tool. Rather the opposite, they are guided by a rule utilitarian inspiration, in the sense that they are the idea is to measure outcomes that are measurable, that usually they try to evaluate the actions that in a way the impact of the evaluation in terms of maximizing the average utility. They are usually not paying so much attention to any distributive concerns and to the fact that there might be these adaptive preferences that can affect the participants of the experiment. So although they seem to be value-free, indeed, in the way in which they are used and the way in which they are measured, they are, by the way, inspired by utilitarian inspiration, utilitarian view. Further, they typically take a short-term perspective for some reasons, because clearly to implement an experiment is quite expensive. They want to produce results for the donors, and donors want to know in a short term what has been the impact of the project. So they are usually taking a short-term view. They are mostly focused on direct effect, tangible effects of one specific project, and in a specific space and time. So in a way, they try to narrow down and to limit the focus of investigation for different reasons, because clearly it is easier, it is cheaper, it is quicker. But in a way, again, we know that development projects often they may produce their results in the medium long terms. They may have not just a direct effect and tangible effects, but also indirect and intangible effects. And often the projects are not just a single project, but they can be related to other projects as well. So in a way, the idea is to try to be able to control as much as they can the evaluation exercise, while indeed in the real world it's quite hard to, in a way, to isolate the project and the effects that it can produce in such a way. So we are not in a lab, we are in a specific context. A further important issue is that they cannot be used retrospectively, in the sense that usually RCTs are implemented, are designed before the project starts. They are implemented immediately when the project starts, and then they track the project up to the certain point or up to the end in order to evaluate the effects. So it means that if for any reason, and I will show you in the test that we have done in Kenya, the project was already completed. So in these cases, clearly you can't use the RCTs. But as I said, often you may not have you may not consider the possibility to use RCTs since the very beginning, or you may not have the sufficient amount of money for implementing an RCTs since the beginning. So the question is that, okay, what can we do in order to evaluate the efficacy of a policy that has been already completed or is still in progress? And finally, they are very expensive. So which means that this is another quite important issues in my view in development projects, is that they are draining a lot of resources that could be used for implementing projects, for helping people, for supporting communities, while a large amount of money today is invested for doing RCTs rather than for doing projects or for supporting people. So here is just a quote from Martin Ravaillaon. He said that feasible for a non-random subset of policies and settings, so we lose our ability to make inferences about a broad range of policies if we rely solely on randomized experiments. So they can be used, they can be valuable, can be used in a very effective way, but it is hard to imagine that they should represent the gold standard, or they should monopolize any kind of evaluation in development projects, because there are some limitations that I think that is important also to acknowledge and to take into consideration. So to sum up, RCTs can hardly be used when development projects are broad in scope or aim to integrate the social environmental values, so not just focusing on beneficiaries, but also on the communities at large. They cannot be used when the project have been already implemented. When projects may generate effects even or mostly in the medium or in the long run, so not something that you can measure immediately. When these development projects can produce, and usually produce, cross-sectoral and cross-thematic spillover, so they may affect other sectors and other dimensions of human being or well-beings. And further, when the operational evaluation is equally relevant as the impact evaluation. So when the donors, the practitioners, the policy makers is interested not just in the final result, the final outcomes of the project, but also in the process, the way in which the project has been designed, implemented, and applied. So in all these cases, the RCTs are not immediately helpful. And clearly, for the reason that I just said, they may not be the best tool to be used when we want to assess the impact, not of just a single intervention, but rather of a set of projects or policies that are aimed to improve, for instance, the living condition in a community. So this is, in a way, our pars destruens, let's say. Now, the idea that we don't want to say that we can't, it is not our intention to say that the RCTs are a bad tool. It is a powerful tool. It is, in some cases, can be a very effective tool. but still there are some important aspects that are missed and that the RCTs, for one reason or for another, are not able to capture or are not able to take into account. So here is our parse construence. So what we want to suggest in brief. So we think that the capability approach can indeed contribute to this literature and in a quite substantial way. I'm assuming that this audience is very familiar with the key principles of the capability approach, because you have had already the possibility to learn and to discuss more on the key elements of this approach. But if there is anything which is unclear, please just stop me and I'm happy to try to clarify a little bit more. So what we know is that the capability approach is a holistic view of human being and try to provide an account of well-being in different domains, in different dimensions. In a way is a thick concept with clear epistemic and ethical connotations, and in a way the values that guide that are inspired by the capability approach is something which is that are quite that characterize in a way in a quite substantial way the capability approach. We know that there is a clear focus on opportunity, freedom, and on agency. So in the level of engagement and capacity for people to be free to make choices and to be an actor of change. There is a clear evidence about the heterogeneity of personal and contextual circumstances that contribute to determine individual well-being or to generate poverty symptoms. So this attention to individuals and to context and to the interaction between individuals and context is one of the distinctive features. But we also know that is a way of thinking, is a methodology in our sense, so it's very much focused on the two first layers of analysis that we identified in the beginning. But it's not an algorithm, it's not offering us a method or an algorithm that can be used, that need to be used, but rather is a flexible and can be adapted to different possible methods. Again, what is important here is that the methods used and interpretation of the methods used are coherent with the methodology, so with the first two layers of analysis that characterize the capability approach. So why we think that can be relevant for making evaluation exercise? Well, because exactly for this multidimensionality, a multi-layer account of well-being and development, trying to bring together, for one hand, the multiple dimensions of well-being and the multi-layers, so the micro level, the meso level, and the macro level, that in a way are relevant from a capability perspective and should be taken into consideration in any evaluation exercise. Second aspect that we think that is particularly relevant for the evaluation purposes is the capacity to focus on not just on the outcomes dimensions, but also on the process, so on the way in which it's possible to achieve these outcomes, including this agency dimension and this opportunity freedom dimension that characterize the capability approach. So it's not just important the final results, but also the trajectory, the way in which you are able to reach that specific result. As I said already, there is this important nexus between individuals and context, and there is this aspect related to empowerment of beneficiaries and of communities that should be considered and taken into account. So it's not just focusing on the impact on people, but also on the impact in the communities as a whole. So here you have received several readings that, by view, can be of help for having a better understanding on how the capability approach can be used in terms of evaluation, and particularly in evaluation of development projects. So as you can see, it's a quite a recent literature. Again, I think there is much more that can be done, and I would suggest you to read this paper just in order to see what could be the potential of this approach for a development project. There are several interesting applications of it, and I think that there are some authors, like, for instance, Heather Henderson, who discussed the moral foundation of impact evaluation from a capability perspective, while the other papers are more focused on specific applications of the capability approach in impact analysis, with this focus on people and as well as on community. So the next step that we try to do, so we discussed some key elements of an analytical framework to be used for impact evaluation. We discussed the gold standard method, who are RCTs. We try to argue why the capability approach can be of help in offering a different way of thinking and a different framework for evaluating development projects. And then what we have done here is to try to compare the RCT method with the capability approach methodology. So in order to try to see in terms of the 4 layers of analysis that I mentioned before, how do they relate to each other? So the reference point here is the table that I showed you before with the 4 levels, and try to see to what extent the RCTs can, in a way, be related, can try to give an answer, can be interpreted in a way in terms of that specific framework of analysis that we suggest. We try to make this analysis both in separating what is the operational evaluation compared to the impact evaluation. As I said already, the operational evaluation is related especially on the way in which the project is designed and implemented. So not the results, but the design and implementation of the project. For instance, what has been the stakeholders' engagement, what is the governance that has been implemented, has been designed, what are the spillovers effect, what is the gap between planned, achieved outputs and intended or unintended consequences. So in a way, there is a more focus on the first 2 layers, if you want, compared to the impact evaluation, which is more on the beneficiaries side and in terms of the impact produced by the project. So the impact evaluation, as I said, is more on focus on direct beneficiaries. I don't know if you can read this table, which is quite small probably, but here we identify in the column some aspects that we think that might be important to take into consideration. And then in the second and the third row, we try to summarize these the RCTs with the capability approach, here in terms of operational evaluation and then in terms of impact evaluation. Again, I don't want to go into details on all these aspects, but just in order to give you the rough idea of what is our discussion. In terms of replicability, for instance, as I already mentioned, the RCTs being a standardized method are usually thought to be more easily replicable and thus more informative for policymakers and donors, because they can be used in many different contexts. Whereas it is much more difficult to replicate inquiries if we adopt a capability perspective, because the capability perspective is open to different methods. So you can use different methods depending on the choice of the researchers or the circumstances or the scope of the evaluation. In terms of ethical perspective, as already mentioned, the RCTs are implicitly assuming are utility-based, are inspired by utility theory, while the capability approach clearly tend to put more emphasis and more focus on the worst stuff. In terms of results, okay. In terms of RCTs are not, as I say, are not really value neutral, but are inspired by a rule of utilitarian ethics. And this can generate easier to handle results in a way, while in the case of the capability approach, the Steinian philosophy is more an evolution of the rules and approach based on giving priority to the worst of. Further, for instance, in terms of the stakeholders' empowerment, it's not usually the main focus of the RCTs, while clearly can be the major focus from the perspective of the capability approach. In terms of broad vision of the project, as I say, the RCTs tend to be more focused on a specific, well-defined project rather than on the plurality of interventions that can be done. In terms of the stakeholders' engagement, it is not very common. It is not very common to see that these aspects are considered in the RCTs, while tend to be more relevant from a capability perspective. So again, I don't want to bother you by discussing if each of these says, but just to say that in the paper we try to make this comparison and see how the two different the RCTs and the CA can, in principle, address these single issues and single problems that can be considered relevant from a development project perspective. Here we do the same by referring to the impact evaluation, so the one that refer more on results, on the outcomes, rather than on the operational phase. Again, I don't want to go one by one on these aspects, but again, the sense is just simply to emphasize the distinctive element of the RCTs versus the distinctive element that you can find in a capability approach perspective. So let me just try to conclude this presentation by showing you a case studies where we try to implement this methodology inspired based on the capability approach. The project is referred to a maternal and neonatal health intervention in an informal setting in Nairobi, Kenya. So the project is called Sono Mobile Project. And it was a way for using a portable ultrasound technology in order to support pregnant women and little kid in this context of informal setting in Nairobi. So what we want to evaluate, and why we decided that the capability approach could be of help in evaluating this project. First, it was a retrospective evaluation. So when we started this evaluation, the project was essentially almost to an end. It was just completed. It was a project that was broad in scope. It was aimed, clearly it was the primary scope was to provide health services for pregnant women, but also had more long-term scopes and was aimed to produce positive externalities, especially to change in social norms. In that context, the uses of medical devices is not usual. So there is a lot of, in a way, worries and prejudices regarding the use of these devices for examining what is the state of the health status of the mother and the fetus. Further, there was this idea of having a clear stakeholders engagement, particularly for nurses that were trained to use these medical devices, and they were actively engaged in all different phases in terms of relationship with these mothers. So there was a mobile clinic, so that was going to this slum in order to involve women and these pregnant women in the use of these medical device and these diagnostic methods. So the scope was involve nurses and train them on this regard, but also to empower disadvantaged women so that they can be more aware about the importance to have this medical control during their pregnancies in order to give birth in a more healthy way and to be more aware about the health of their babies. So what was important since the beginning, this was a project that was supported by an external donors that was implemented by an NGO based in this place, was not only to focus on the outcomes, so how many mothers were able to benefit from this intervention, but also in a way to see to what extent the process was able in a way to achieve through this process was able to achieve a given outcomes. So what was important was not the outcomes, but also the process through which these outcomes were achieved. So 3 were essentially the research questions that we want to address. The first one is what effects did the project have on target groups and beneficiaries, which this is quite a conventional scope of this analysis, but also what have the project spillover been, if any, and if they did activate the individual and collective agency. So the second and the third question are more, in a way, more typically relevant from a capability perspective. The second one, which is also very typical, can be easily be reconducted to the capability approach, is how much have the ownership by local actors, beneficiaries engagement, and capacity building activities affected these outcomes. So again, not just the outcomes, but also the ownership and the capacity building of these activities. The third question is, as the context influenced the project outcomes and sustainability. So as I said before, the context was quite a difficult context because it's an informal settlement with a huge level of poverty where the maternal mortality is very high. It is 70% higher than the average value in the country. So it is clearly a quite difficult context. So we want to see to what extent these what has been in a way this context in a way affected the outcomes and what was the sustainability of this project in the medium long term. So we investigated the 6 dimensions that again are related or coherent with the capability approach and are related to the theoretical framework that I presented in the beginning. The first one is the local ownership of the project and involvement of beneficiaries in terms of partnership. The second dimension was the participation of local actors and the governance mechanism that was implemented. So just to see if indeed the actors were fully embedded and fully involved in this project. The third dimension was related to the agency and empowerment dimension, both for individuals and the community level. The fourth dimension was the impact in terms of tangible and intangible impacts in the short, but even in the medium and the long run. So as I say, the project was already completed when we started the evaluation exercise. So we were able to not just to capture the short impact, but also the medium and the long run impact. The fifth dimension referred to the cross-sectoral and the cross-thematic spillover effects. So clearly it was a health project, but the question is that it had also some consequences on other aspects as well. For instance, in the training experience and the professional life for nurses, but also in terms of women empowerment, that for those women that were involved in the project, the idea to be able to be part of this project and to learn about their health and the health of their kids was something that in a way give them the sense of being more empowered and more able to, for instance, to deal with the future pregnancies. And finally, we also try to pay attention to the dimension of environmental, social, and economic sustainability of the project. We use a mixed method, so we use both quantitative and qualitative analysis. We implemented a questionnaire used for both the nurses and the women, but also we did focus groups and more qualitative investigation, both with the nurses as well as with the pregnant women. Briefly, what have been the main findings that we got? First of all, what we observed was an increased and cheaper access to advanced medical devices. So the number of women that was able to have access to these services was pretty high. And although with some difficulties at the beginning to overcome this stigma or these worries about the use of these medical devices, for instance, for their culture is quite unusual and not fully accepted. The idea to know the sex of the baby before giving birth, because it might be something that can be not accepted by their own cultural and social norms. I think that they can be dangerous. They can be in a way something that shouldn't be known in advance. But then when they realize that these through these services were possible for them, for instance, to know if they were twins, so to the delivery could be more risky, so it was more important to go to the hospital for giving birth in case of twins. They realized that this was something that was important for the health of the women and the health of the kids. There was this knowledge spillovers, as I said, that were both for the nurses in terms of their professional curriculum and their capacity to use technologies, essentially, although quite simple, but still are medical advanced technological devices. But there also was this spillovers effect within the community, because once that the women were persuaded to be part of this project, they were able to inform other women in the community, so they were able in a way to support the community overall in going to the hospital and benefiting from this service, from this healthcare service. As I said, there was this nurse empowerment. The nurses were feel more comfortable, feel more for expert. They had the impression to be expert and to be able to use this technology that was something that was very much helpful for even for their own career. And in terms of, so these are the main results the main findings that we observed. So as you can see, not just the number of beneficiaries, full stop, but more richer and more broader information that can be indeed very much relevant for even for the donors or for the practitioners for implementing future projects. So the key lesson learned is that there was this presence of myths about medical technologies, as I said before, in a community that was mostly used to traditional medicine. And so this, in a way, suggested the donors and the practitioners that was important to that the project was important for changing the social norms in the long term. So in a way, overcoming these taboos, these ideas, these myths about the use of this technology. So in a way, this was a cultural or social norms that could change, but just in long term, it's not something that you can observe immediately. The second lesson learned is that it was extremely important involvement of the local government in the financing structure in order to ensure the project's sustainability. Again, the project was quite a success, and so it was possible with the engagement of the local government that was able to observe this project and the efficacy of the project to guarantee that once the project was completed, they were available to continue to offer this service. The devices were donated to the community, so the nurses were trained. So the cost for guarantee the sustainability of the project was pretty low from this point of view. The importance to pay attention to the empowerment of the stakeholders in terms of the local healthcare workers and in terms of the patients, so the pregnant women. The importance to try to integrate the project with the functioning referral system so as to maintain, to conserve, to preserve this information to be used for future needs, for instance, for future pregnancies. The importance of the context, as I said before, the context was particularly hard because it was this informal, very poor settlement. But again, the value added in a way of this project in that specific context was clearly very high. So just try to sum up what we have done with this paper's contribution and with this talk tonight is to suggest the importance to put order in a way to identify through an analytical framework different separate but really related layers of analysis, marking a clear distinction between methodologies that are in a way broader and should guide and should inspire the way in which we are doing our evaluation exercise. And this should be very clearly defined. And to distinguish methodologies from methods. Methods may be different. You may use different methods, including RCTs. So again, RCTs defined within a methodological frameworks that try to make explicit the values, the epistemological aspects, the measurement purposes, and this offering this broader perspective can, in a way, enforce what is already a quite robust tool like the RCTs, but adapting much more to the context and to the multiple purposes that a development project may have. The second contribution is to go beyond impact evaluation, which still remain important clearly, but also equally important is to focus much more on the operational aspects that, according to us, are so important, so relevant for designing future projects, designing better projects for the future, for considering these pillars of a development project or development policies that refer to the way in which the project is designed, implemented, and evaluated. So we think that the capability approach can be indeed a helpful methodological tool that can embed different methods, including RCTs, as I just pointed out. Clearly, it's just a first step. As I told you before, is a work in progress, so it's something that need to be further investigated, and any comments or suggestions from you is most than welcome. But the lesson learned, the future lines of investigation, we would like just to try to investigate further, to consider further, is this idea to identify a complex and multi-layer, to reflect on this complex and multi-layer nature of any evaluation analysis. So it's not just a technicality, it's not just a method that need to be applied in a quite a mechanicistic way, but it's important to try to consider, to have a broader perspective that can guide this exercise. The outcomes are important, but equally important are also the processes through which we can achieve these outcomes. It's important to consider a value-laden approach where values are an integral part of the process. So I think that we can't neglect this definition of explicit definition of the values that inspire the action of any policymakers or any practitioners or donors. Finally, what we would like to do is to consider the possibility to extend. Tonight, I just talk about development projects. What I think that can be probably equally helpful to apply this framework also for investigating the efficacy of development policies. So at the policy level, not just at the level of project, but the development in terms of development policies and development programs. Again, we think that this framework can be of some help anyway. Thank you for your attention. Hope I have not been too long. I didn't ask to Ronnie at the beginning how much time I could take. Hope it's not too much.
No, it's all right. And thank you so much. And the main attraction of this lecture is it is very clear, specific, and what some of my participants sometimes want to raise, that capability approach is more or less a theoretical perspective rather than a practical exposition. But you have presented this evaluating development projects, or we can extend it to non-development projects, some social projects, or some other frontiers. So using capability approach to such a vivid and such a clear difference, it has potential to contribute. So this attraction is the main attraction so far I have perceived from your lecture. But usually after lecture, the usual practice is to give some rest to speaker for 5 to 7 minutes, because it's really stressing to speak for nearly an hour or more. So in these 5 to 10 minutes, we'll actually take some feedback and prepare us for the next session for question Q&A session. So usually our Q&A session starts uh, after 5 to 7 minutes of finishing the speaker's address. And may I request Professor Patnaik sir that how was the lecture and how do you actually feel about this today's presentation?
You want me to give my comments now or after the break?
It's completely your choice. When you want to talk, you are the convener of this study circle. So I was thinking that
I think
if you say some few words and then your major comments in the later part, that would be wonderful.
well, maybe I shall just comment in a general now. Later on, I may ask one or two specific questions. The first comment is wonderful. The lecture
Yes.
was absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
Very clear and covered a lot of material. And I would like to thank our distinguished speaker for that. But any specific comment I shall give maybe after our speaker has a bit of rest. After the
Right.
break.
Yes. Sure. Thank you so much, sir. And some of our distinguished upcoming speakers joined us, and we are truly honored. Professor Maurice Saleh is here. Professor Rajat Deb is also here. So, Professor Rajat Deb, would you like to say something on today's presentation?
Well, I'm not, it was a wonderful presentation. And I sort of agree that these randomized trials do not focus adequately on the ethical basis of these trials. So that I'm in complete agreement with. I think feel that this approach also focuses in some sense too much on trying to be precise, trying to imitate medical experiments. And even in medicine, a lot of these experiments are discontinued when it is very clear that the impact of a particular medicine is so positive that it becomes unethical. And as far as I know, that something like that has never happened. In policymaking, I believe sometimes squishiness, which is the main criticism of the capabilities approach, can in fact be an advantage. Trying to be too precise may not be the way to go. That is my instinct. Because, we economists focus on optimizing, trying to get the best, but often just avoiding major disasters can get us better results.
Yes, that is very true. Actually, in 2 or 3 years back, Nobel Prize when Nobel Prize was awarded on on doing research on RCT method. and then immediately after next year, it was natural experiment which Nobel Committee has nominated the Nobel Prize. So, many of us who are doing mainstream economics, RCT is all through in our head, but there is a there is a world beyond our city, and there are serious limitations. In fact, my PhD supervisor is very critical about our city, and he will never allow me to use our city in my research. At the very beginning, he has already declared this. This is the thing, and also we are very fortunate and we are very honored that our session 4 speaker, Professor Yangsheng Su, is also here. Professor Su, hi. You have joined us. We are very honored. Would you like to say something on today's presentation?
Well, I mean, it was a very clear presentation, and I learned a lot. And I learned, well, sometimes we have to be thoughtful about RCT, and we should resort to the functioning capability approach if we want to have a dimension like ethical consideration. That's very nice. Thank you.
Right. And also from France, Professor Maurice Saleh is here. Hello, sir. Sir, please unmute.
Hello. Well, I was a bit late in joining the session, so
okay.
I have not heard all what Enrica said.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Right. No, it's all right, sir. So I think we can begin our Q&A session, question and answer session. So one of our distinguished participant, Professor Kishore Khanal from Nepal, he is here. So would you like to ask some questions to Professor Enrica?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Enrica, for this wonderful presentation. I don't have any particular question on this presentation because I am just learning about all these things. So to ask a question, one must have sufficient knowledge on that matter, or one must be sufficiently confused on that matter. And right now, neither I am confused nor I am sufficiently oriented about this. So I don't have any question. Thank you.
Okay. So my friend, my friend Su Mingku, are you there? Are you in front of?
Yeah,
somebody?
I
Yes,
just switched off my video because we had some stormy conditions. So I didn't want to, in case it became distracting and unstable. I don't have any particular questions for Enrica. It was a really good presentation, and really
excellent.
a model also of how we can teach our students. I particularly liked the table, which really helped to clarify the different approaches and also to clearly distinguish between methodology and methods. Because I think that there's been too much focus on techniques, and maybe this leads us to neglect and forget asking more important questions. So I also really appreciated Enrica's very gentle way of engaging in broadening the debate. And this is really a model, I think, for us in the community and how we how we engage critically.
Yes.
You know, in and not, it's not really about methodological wars, but it really is about trying to be very clear about what we can do and what we can't, and then to try to be a little bit broader and to ask the deeper questions about why we are doing this, what the values are, what are we measuring, what can we measure, what maybe can't be measured. I liked the comment on squishiness very much, that, you know, squishy things might be very valuable, especially because they're different things that are different shapes that are difficult to measure together, might really go together and be very important, how they go together. So I don't really have specific questions, maybe something around methods and methodology and the production of ignorance, with our tendency to chase fame and Nobel Prizes and to think about things that are lauded as being laudable, and how maybe that doesn't serve, you know, what I see in our own community is really fruitful and flourishing attempts to understand and measure and evaluate different ideas of progress and different possibilities. And yet the state of science has become so scientified that I think it's producing a lot of ignorance. And I wondered maybe if the Professor Chiappero might want to comment on that.
Okay. Right. So, thank you. So, Professor Enrica, would you like to respond one by one, or just take a bunch of them and then you respond?
As you prefer. It's fine for me both ways.
It's all yours. It's all your floors. You have full freedom. Whatever you, which way you like to respond. It's up to
Now,
you.
maybe what I can surely do is to thank you all for your kind and super kind words and sense of appreciation. I have to confess that I'm not in the best shape because I have a cold. So I'm
Okay.
just struggling a little bit with speaking on English. So you've been particularly generous, and I do appreciate your generosity. Thank you so much. Just a comment on this last by Suminku. The idea, I think that, yeah, there is this scientificity, this idea that you can, there is something that is fully objective, value-free, uncontroversial, something that you can use in a very mechanicistic way without raising any question to you as a researcher, assuming that this is the perfect way for measuring something, which in a way, I think that it is fully coherent with the mainstream economic theory, where we oversimplify the issue. The idea is that the individuals are a rational agent, that's it. It doesn't matter who they are, where they live, what are the different aspects of their personality. Individuals are without any further characteristics. The context doesn't matter. So if you take this reductive and super simplistic perspective and assumption, which is typical of the mainstream economics, clearly is fully coherent to have, on the other hand, a methodological tool that is just measuring something in a very essential way, raising no doubt, raising no questions on the specificity of the context, of the human diversity, of the importance to take into consideration even values and ethical aspects related to a specific intervention. But the question here is that we are talking about development projects, development policies. So the scope is to support poor people, marginalized groups, deprived, vulnerable people. So how can we assume that these are individuals, and no matter where do they live, which kind of problem they are facing with, this context, the situation where they live. So I think that it is quite paradoxical in my view, in the sense that this is this sort of automatic way for measuring something, assuming that it is really just one direction of the issues, and this is something that you can always quantify. And this quantification is all what you need to know in order to know to be aware about the efficacy of your policy. It's something that I don't think that is reasonable in general when you are talking about human beings, when you are talking about policies, about actions. But if it is even less justifiable if you are referring to poor context, marginalized people, vulnerable groups. How you can, so in the test that I mentioned before, this project is a project evaluation we conducted. It was in the Korogocho informal settlement in Nairobi. I don't know if you know that context is Nairobi is a city with a growing up, is in a very posh and incredible way. So every year I'm usually teaching there, every year since many years. And so every time when I'm going to Nairobi, I can see what big cars you can have, wonderful big buildings. Seems to be, a developing context with developing in a very fast way. So there is a lot of rich people. But then within the city, nearby to these fashion buildings, there are these informal settlement where more than 100,000 people live there in the dishuman condition, in conditions that really are not acceptable. So if you work there, you can't ignore how complex is the life there, how difficult it is to deal with people that are illiterate, that are just lived in their own life, in their entire life in that context, but seeing what is the life outside the informal settlement. So if this is the scope of the development project is to support, in this case, young women, young pregnant women. So how you can just simply count the number of scans that you have done, and that's it. And just imagine that you have done a certain number. If the expected number of scans has been achieved, that's it. The question is that, to what extent that project is able to change the living condition of these women, to what extent this project is sustainable, to what extent has been able to engage people there, to overcome these taboos, these social norms that make so hard for these women to go to the hospital, for instance, for giving birth. So all these aspects, I think that are essential parts of any development project. And I don't think that it is enough just to assume that if you assume into the RCTs, what you should do is to select a sample of women that will receive the scan and another group of women that will not be receiving the scan. And I can see an ethical issue there, and a huge, enormous ethical issues there. So you can support some women and not other women just on a random basis. And then you can just simply see if there is any differences in terms of maternal health or in terms of mortality, maternal health, or infant mortality rate, and that's it. So I think that in a way it's not something that should be considered sufficient in order to evaluate the efficacy of a project. There must be something more and something different, which is based on the capacity of the practitioners to to be able to be in relationship with these people. The capacity of these nurses to persuade these women about the importance to have these prenatal checks, the importance for the nurses to be able to improve and to learn the knowledge, and so to be able to use this knowledge in the future for other women as well. So these I think that are the things that should be captured in any development project, no evaluation project. While yeah, this the other method, there are more conventional, more the gold standard method that is just assumed to be rigorous and scientifically rigorous, but well, ethically disputable. I don't think that is the best way. But again, I don't think that that tool is wrong. But what I think is that that tool can be adapted, inspired, guided by some broader views and perspective. I'm pretty sure that it might be possible to make a randomized control trials in a different way. If this methodology behind the method is able to guide the exercise of evaluation, because at the end of the day, the scope is just really to see how a development project has been able to change and to improve the living condition of the poor people. So this should be the scope.
Yes. That's wonderful. That's nicely posed. Actually, to tell you frankly, my PhD work also in informal settlements in Dhaka city, because in our literature we used to call slums or slum, and surprisingly, in Dhaka city, every 1 person in every 9 living in Dhaka lives in slum areas, so in informal settlements. So it's quite and Dhaka's Gini coefficient is Gini coefficient is above 0.5. It is actually 0.532. So actually, it is quite alarming. It's a high inequality capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka. So you are very right. So anyone interested to ask questions? Please unmute. Oh, Mustafa Kamal. Okay, unmute
Yes,
and go ahead. Okay.
Thank you very much. It was a really a wonderful presentation, and I learned a lot. So, what I just a request: is it possible to get a copy of the report or the instruments you use to measure specifically the process items? So it will be helpful. How can I just get it and go through to understand better? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mustafa. Sure, yeah. I'm happy to share with you and to send to you the evaluation, the paper where you can find all the details regarding the evaluation of this development project in Nairobi. And it also included the questionnaire and some details regarding the methodology. So I'm happy to send it to you. I don't know if you, in the last slide of my presentation, you can see my email address. So please feel free to send to me an email and I will send to you the paper. While as far as this paper that I presented tonight and was discussing tonight is still in progress, almost done. You're going to submit to a journal. But as soon as we be available again, maybe through Ronnie, I'm happy to send it to you and maybe you can circulate. And as I say before, any comments or suggestions or critiques is most welcome.
Yes, that's sure.
Thank you very much.
Or if it is the case for all the participants to go through Professor Enrica's paper, so So I'll share her work in progress paper with you all as soon as she shares with me. So and then I see Alex. I know you are occupied with your nephew. Would you like to pose a question or any comment? Alex, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Yes.
Sorry, I can just one quick comment.
Yes, sure.
Part
Alex
of what
is a friend of ours who is been joining from Germany, and he's currently doing PhD.
Okay. My only question is, with work like this, given that the gold standard is RCTs and there seems to be a broad consensus as you mentioned, just to get published, you pretty much have to use them. What is the process of kind of starting this work and seeing it go somewhere, or is it kind of fighting a losing battle in a sense?
Thank you, Alex, for your question. So it seems to me that there are some important critiques that have been raised by outstanding scholars like Martin Ravillon, but even August Deaton and others. So I think that now we are already in a sort of a decreasing phase of the large success. As I said before, I don't want to say that is a wrong method, but it seems simply it is a method together with others. Clearly, what is important to do is to try to show that there are other views, other frameworks that can be used and that can complement maybe the information. I don't want to see that they can represent an alternative probably, but they can complement the information that you can get by using the RCTs. But as I said, till a few years ago, it was really virtually impossible to publish any paper on impact evaluation if you were not using RCTs. Now I can see that there are several critical voices that are in a way pointed out the limitations also of these methods, and new approaches are going to be suggested. And this is my point. I think that the capability approach can really offer important insights and important contribution on that. There are already a literature on that, for instance, especially in a more community-based development project or more in a more specific aspects. Again, the multiplicity of methods that can be used are, in my view, is not a weakness, but rather is a richness, in the sense that what is important is to show that behind the methods, there is a methodology which is robust and well consolidated, which is the capability approach. Then the methods can be different. You may use more qualitative approaches, more quantitative approaches. You can use mixed methods. You can use ethnographic research. So I think that this is absolutely reasonable, and the variety of methods can indeed reflect the richness of the debate. But what is important is to try to at least to have maybe the capability approach, maybe another framework. I don't want to say that this is the only one, but it's important to have these ideas back on the use of the method or the method that you want to apply. This idea that in a way is able to discuss, define, describe the perimeter where you want to investigate. So in this sense, I'm quite optimistic, but yeah, although I'm also aware about the fact that much more work needs to be done. And I do hope within this community there will be people available and interested to invest more on this regard.
Yes, yes, sure, sure, of course. My long-term friend and associate, Mr. MD Maruf Hussain, he connected from Canada. Maruf, may I request you to read the comments in the chat box?
Very much, sure. Actually, we have a bunch of comments requesting to share the presentation in the WhatsApp group.
Yes,
So I
actually,
think, yeah.
to interrupt, actually, Professor Enrica has just shared his her presentation through my email. So as usual, I will send a group email immediately after the session, when the session will be over after 11, and then I will share her presentation and the work in progress paper. So don't worry, all materials will be shared. So anything
So
else?
that's the gist of the comments. I think Professor Patnaik has raised his hand. He might have something to raise. Yeah. And we
Yes,
also,
yes.
just a quick note, we're entering the final 10 minutes of the allocated time.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Professor Patnaik, sir, please go ahead, unmute and yes.
I have a particular question about the RCT and the general framework of capability approach. I think the distinction is not probably so much about the method or anything like that. It is almost like a division of labor. What the RCT people are doing, they are concentrating on very specific issues. Suppose I have a value judgment. We should prevent infant deaths or child mortality. We should reduce it. But there are various ways which you can do that. For example, a whole lot of mortality, child mortality is due to problem with water supply in India. Then there is a lot of child mortality because of the lack of mother's education. She is not aware of certain things. Now, we have a limited resource. Therefore, which particular method shall we use? Shall we use first try to purify the water supply? Or should we increase the women's awareness? We can't do everything in one go. There's a limited amount of resource. Therefore, for example, here, RCT will come in, which is suppose we provide basic education to women, then by how much is infant mortality getting reduced under controlled circumstances? Another alternative question is, suppose I supply pure water, by how much it is getting reduced? And then I can see which one I shall follow, which particular method. Now, these specific questions are the domain of RCT. Here, neither theory can help, because theory will give us, pure theory will give us, pure theory in the sense of standard hour micro theory, it will tell us the direction that it will decrease. But by how much it will decrease, we don't have any insight. And that's something very valuable that RCT is providing. So it seems to me they are not trying to answer the type of question that are being raised in the capability approach. It is not because they don't think should not be asked, but because they are focusing on one specific aspect. Sorry, if I'm tending to go too long, please stop me, because I don't want to talk too much. So what capability approach is doing, it is considering a wide range of values. It is opening up the range of values. Now, that opening up the range of values is a very valuable thing, but equally valuable is the RCT, given the values, particular values, which is the best method of achieving it in terms of resource. So they are not trying to address these issues at all. So one particular approach is addressing a certain set of values. The other approach is asking a factual question. The factual facts will be ultimately relevant. What should we do? That is a value judgment, and it is providing the answer to that in a different way by answering specific questions. And after that, the policymaker can come in and decide what is he going to do. So it seems there are two different aspects of the thing. One is the general values, range of values, which is RCA has, sorry, not RCA, the capability approach has been very effective in answering. But the other part is being taken up by these more specific approaches of whether it is randomized control experiment or other things, other methods. So it's a question of facts and values. Now, values do not necessarily tell us what to do. The facts are necessary because the values are saying, okay, infant mortality should be reduced. But what should I still do policy-wise? That cannot be answered unless we go into each of the specific issues. Therefore, in some sense, there is no tension between the two. Development is such a complex process. It involves a lot of value judgments. It also involves very specific factual information. This randomized control experiment is giving us the factual information. Then after that, the values are to come in. I don't know if that makes sense.
Make a lot of sense for sure. I completely agree. The question again, if we look at from the perspective of donors, the risk is that it might be privileged the fact to intervene, for instance, in providing clean water, because you can, in a way, you can see the impact of this project in a short term. Investing in the women and mothers' education requires a longer time, no, in order to see the effects. Clearly, an effect of a higher level of education of mothers will have a major positive impact in terms of the health of their kids. But again, there are also other aspects as well that might be relevant that you would like to consider, because a better mother, better educated, can also have a more voice within the family, can be more empowered within their community, can be part of the social community in a different way, can find a job and can provide, create income generating activities. So again, although the intervention was aimed to improve the living condition to reduce the child mortality rate, there are other effects as well that are valuable, that should be taken into consideration, but that probably in a more mechanistic way, where the scope is to observe, to understand, more knowledge for a mother means lower mortality probability to die for a kid, is something which is narrowed down and maybe is neglecting other effects, positive effects that a better educated mother may have in other dimensions as well. And then there is this issue related to the time needed in order to observe and to appreciate the effects. Education is typically something that can produce results in the medium terms rather than in the short terms. So again, the risk is that this possibility to have a measurable effects in a short term, which is quite attractive for donors, can drive the projects in one specific direction, which probably is a good direction, but probably not the best direction that you can consider. So in this sense, even the design of policies and the kind of intervention can be affected by the method itself, which is quite paradoxical in the sense that in my view, there should be the reasons that can motivate a given development project or a development policies. And then you can be interested to observe the effects. The risk is that there is a sort of a different perspective that can guide the projects in a way, just simply because in that way is more easy to measure, in the short term. Again, I think that this can introduce several bias in a way, in development, potentially at least. I don't know if I've been persuade, be able
Right.
to provide good arguments as you present. Your arguments were much better than mine.
No.
For sure.
May I just add one more comment?
Yes,
I don't think the randomized control experiment people would object to that. They would say that, okay, if the women's education is helping, then let's try to quantify that, how much it is helping. Let's conduct an experiment over a period of time.
Yeah.
In other words, each one of these relevant. For each one of these, they would say, okay, you think that it is relevant, let's conduct this experiment. So they are providing the factual information on the basis of which the final value judgment will depend.
Yeah.
So in some sense, it is a division of labor.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Okay.
Yes. Enjoying most beautiful minds debates, and we are enriching by these dialogues. That's wonderful. Anyone else? We are just going to conclude today. Yes, Nazma Sheikh. Yes, sure.
I was late
Go
to
ahead.
come. I apologize. I've had some connectivity issues. I'm from South Africa. I work in health and development. And I wanted to comment about the RCTs. You may have covered it, and I apologize if I've missed something. I mean, the thing from my perspective from the development side is RCTs are extremely expensive to implement. And so for me, from an ethical side, that is also something to consider. Are there alternative methods of measuring an intervention other than an RCT, or is RCT the only way? Arguably, with COVID, one could say, yes, we didn't know about the vaccine. RCTs were necessary in a time of crisis, and that's why you do that. But the question is, if you're talking about interventions that don't require testing a hypothesis of efficacy, is whether providing education would be useful. But it's rather the how do we provide education that would sort of be useful. And for me, RCTs don't always answer that question from the development side, because there is a spillover. For example, if you are educating a household, there is the neighbor who would be benefiting from a conversation from the household. So it also contaminates your intervention versus those exposed and non-exposed. And in terms of, for me, the ethical question is, for this amount of money or funds to run a short-term experiment, arguably not always guaranteeing external validity, because as the speaker said, context matters, and that is very true. And if you're talking about application and scale up, or using these methods in other contexts, then does one do an RCT in different spaces? And does one need to know that level of information to sort of conclude that this is a useful method to read something? So I'm not sure if I'm adding to this conversation rather late, but I thought.
Thank you, Naima. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's true. They are extremely expensive. They are draining a lot of resources that, instead of to be used for development projects, are used for RCTs. So it's a business, honestly, it's a business. And there are a lot of organizations that are just doing that in a quite mechanicistic way, just for doing business, essentially. So, which is nothing wrong. I don't want to say that is wrong, but it's true that many NGOs are criticizing this recurrent approach exactly for the reason that you say, because instead of investing money in development projects, you have to allocate a remarkable amount of money for doing RCTs, because otherwise the donors will not give you money. So in a way, it is quite well, it may have some substantial consequences. And yes, I completely agree with you, Naima, also on the fact that it cannot be, it is not the best method for in any circumstances. It may be a powerful method in certain circumstances if you want to measure something which is measurable in such a narrow way. I don't want to say, I stressed this point many times, I don't want to be completely critical regarding the RCTs. I can appreciate, I also like the elegance of the method. In a way, it's quite elegant and easy to use and to explain and to justify. But yeah, it is not the only one. This is my point. There might be other way in other circumstances that can shed light on aspects that are equally relevant for the donors and the policymakers. And now we are completely neglecting these aspects due to the fact that we are just assuming that perspective and presuming that that perspective is the best one that you can use, or probably the unique one that you can use. So this is my critical point. So thank you for raising your comments on the basis of your experience. I think that, yeah, it is exactly aligned with my own view.
Right. May I ask Maruf to go through quickly on chat box that people drop their comments or questions, and then we will conclude.
Yeah, just a couple of comments added. First one was from So Ming Ku. She mentioned, in my university, they have just closed a humanities and a social science research center and opened a new research center exclusively devoted to RCTs. Thank you for an excellent presentation, and we'll look forward to using this paper for teaching and research. Okay, that was the first one. And the second one was just thanking the organizers. So thanks to you for participating as well. Yeah, that's all from the chat box for today.
Okay. Thank you again, Professor Martinetti. It is really an honor to have you and getting so much insight from your research and from your experiences. Well, I'm sure every person in this room enlightened by your discussions, and also thank you for participating all so vibrantly. So thank you again, Professor Enrica Martinetti Chiappero. Would you like to say some words? And with that, we will finally close the session.
I would just really renew my warmest thanks to you, Ronnie, for this excellent organization, to all the organizers. I really appreciated this initiative. I think that it's really a unique and brilliant initiative. So congratulations for the organizers, and thanks to all the participants for spending this time tonight with me instead of your family, with your family. So I do appreciate it. It has been lovely to meet you all, although only virtually. But I do hope that there will be the possibility to interact again,
Yes,
both
of
virtually or in one of our HDCA conferences. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really grateful
Thank
and
you.
happy for being involved in this initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all. And this is the end of today's session. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.